I sat in my favorite chair by the window, watching the evening shadows fall across the front lawn. It was 7:30, and Baldwin Park Street was slowly emptying as the neighbors went home after a day of work. My house, built in the '50s, had been on this street for 70 years. I had bought it 30 years ago, when I was a secretary in a law firm and could afford it. The cup of cooled tea was on the table next to it. I hadn't touched it in about 20 minutes, thinking about how my relationship with my daughter had changed in the last few months. Samantha used to call once a week, visiting on holidays and birthdays. Now she showed up almost every weekend, and always with Rowan. 3 weeks ago, they came over on a Saturday morning. Samantha brought the shopping from the supermarket and started cleaning the kitchen, even though I hadn't asked her to. Rowan, meanwhile, was inspecting the water taps, checking the windows as if he were looking for faults. When I asked what he was doing, he said he was worried about my safety. Mom, don't you think this house is too big for one person? Samantha asked, wiping down the already clean countertop. I'm comfortable here, I replied. But think about practicality. You're 72 years old, and it's getting harder and harder to maintain such a large household. I looked at my daughter more closely. Samantha was 38 years old, and she had always been calculating. Even as a child, she had been able to get her way with logical arguments, not tears and whimsy. Now she had the same note of conviction in her voice that I remembered from her teenage years. I'm doing fine with the house, I said then. Rowan lifted his head from the faucet he'd been studying for about 10 minutes. Jacqueline, we're just looking out for you. Imagine what would happen if you fell on the stairs or got sick and there was no one around. His words sounded reasonable, but something in his tone made me wary. Rowan worked as a manager for a car sales company and knew how to be persuasive. In 5 years of marriage to Samantha, he'd never once shown much interest in my well-being, and now he was suddenly so attentive. The next week they came again. This time, it was about the will. Mom, you made a will, didn't you? Samantha asked, stirring the sugar in her tea. I did, I answered briefly. Can I see it? Just to make sure the paperwork is in order. Why would you do that? Well, Mom, I'm your only daughter. It's only natural that I should know what you're up to. Rowan sat beside me and nodded like it was a requirement. The will is in the safe, I said. When the time comes, you'll know everything. Samantha frowned but didn't say anything, but Rowan couldn't resist. Jacqueline, what if there's something wrong with the paperwork? It's better to check beforehand than to go through the paperwork later. The papers are fine, I replied. I had a good lawyer draw up my will. This conversation left an unpleasant aftertaste. I couldn't understand why my daughter was suddenly so concerned about my legal affairs. She had never been interested in such things before. A week later, they showed up again, and this time, Rowan brought in flyers for nursing homes. Look at the wonderful facilities, he said, spreading the glossy brochures on the coffee table. 24-hour medical supervision, organized meals, a social program. I'm not moving into a nursing home, I said firmly. Mom, it's not a nursing home. It's a modern apartment complex for the elderly, Samantha corrected me. It's very comfortable, and you won't have to take care of the household. I like taking care of my household, but it's such a burden, she insisted. And if you sell this house, you can afford the best apartment in the complex. That's when it hit me. Samantha and Rowan didn't just care about my comfort. They wanted me to sell the house. And judging by their insistence, they wanted it badly. I got up out of my chair and walked over to the window. The evening air was fresh and cool. My garden looked tidy. I watered the flowers myself, trimmed the bushes, planted new plants every spring. The house needed attention, but it was mine. Every room held the memories of 30 years of my life. This is where I celebrated Samantha's birthdays. This is where I greeted her graduation. This is where I saw her off to be married. Why did my daughter want me to leave all this behind? The answer came naturally. Samantha expected to inherit the house, but she wanted the money now. If I sold the property and moved into a nursing home, she could expect a substantial amount of money while I was alive. And when I died, she would only get the residue from the sale of the house, which I wouldn't have time to spend. I returned to the chair and took the cooled tea in my hands. Samantha had always been good at planning ahead, but I'd never thought of her plans for my property before. Apparently, I was wrong. The sound of a car pulling up made me glance out the window. Samantha's familiar car stopped at the gate. Her daughter and son-in-law got out and headed toward the house. Rowan was holding a briefcase, and Samantha was carrying a folder of some sort. I looked at the clock. 7:45 on a Wednesday night. They usually came on weekends. An unscheduled visit didn't bode well. The doorbell rang exactly 2 minutes after I'd seen their car. I took my time opening it, giving myself time to gather my thoughts. Through the glass insert in the door, I could see two figures, the daughter and son-in-law, waiting patiently on the porch. "Mom, open up, it's us," Samantha said. I unlocked the lock and stepped back, letting them into the hallway. Samantha kissed me on the cheek as she usually did, but the gesture felt a little mechanical. Rowan nodded politely and immediately looked around as if assessing the situation. "Are we interrupting?" the daughter asked, taking off her light jacket. "We were just driving by and thought we'd stop by." The lie was obvious. They lived 20 minutes away, in the opposite direction from the city center where they both worked. There was absolutely no reason for them to drive past my house. "Come into the living room," I said. We settled into familiar surroundings, me in my chair, them on the couch across from me. Rowan set his briefcase beside him, and Samantha put the folder on the coffee table. There was a relaxed silence in the room, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. "What's up, Mom?" Samantha began. "Are you feeling okay?" "I feel great." "Are you sleeping okay?" "I remember you complaining about insomnia." I didn't remember complaining about insomnia. "On the contrary, I've been sleeping better than usual lately." "I sleep well." "That's wonderful," Rowan said, but it was clear from his tone that he wasn't saying what he thought he was saying. "Is everything okay with the neighbors? No problems?" The question seemed odd. My relationship with my neighbors has always been smooth and friendly. "No problems." "It's just that Mrs. Connor from across the street called Samantha," Rowan continued. "Said she'd seen you walking in the garden late at night. She's worried. I've known Mrs. Connor for years, and she's never interfered in my affairs. Besides, she didn't have Samantha's phone number." "That's not true," I said calmly. Samantha and Rowan looked at each other. There was something prearranged in that look, as if they were rehearsing an upcoming conversation. "Mom," my daughter began in a soft voice, "Rowan and I have been thinking a lot about your situation. You live here all alone in such a big house. It's a 3-story building with a basement and an attic. Isn't it hard for you to keep it all in order?" I manage. "Of course you do," Samantha agreed quickly. "But the question is not whether you're doing it now. The question is what's going to happen in a year, in 2 years. You're 72 years old, and the workload is only going to increase." Rowan leaned forward, adopting a posture of confidence. "Jacqueline, we don't mean to offend or belittle you. It's just that there are certain realities of age that need to be considered. Sooner or later, everyone has to reevaluate their lifestyle." "What realities?" I asked. "Well, like stairs," Samantha said. "You've got stairs to the second floor and stairs to the basement. If you trip or feel dizzy—" "I don't get dizzy." "Not yet. What about your eyesight, hearing, reaction?" "They all deteriorate with age." I looked at my daughter carefully. Her voice sounded concerned, but her eyes remained cold. It was a look I remembered from when Samantha was 15 and she'd convinced me to buy her the expensive purse her classmates wore. My vision, hearing, and reactions are perfectly fine, I said. Right now they are, Rowan agreed. But what if something happens tomorrow? What if you get sick at night and help is far away? Specialized housing has an emergency call system, medical staff, 24-hour security. He spoke coherently, like a man who has given similar speeches many times. Probably how he convinced customers to buy cars with extended warranties or extra options. Rowan, I'm not moving into a nursing home. It's not a nursing home, Samantha objected. It's modern housing for active seniors. It's for independent, self-sufficient people who just want to get out of their own way. I like my chores. Mom, be realistic. You spend an enormous amount of time and energy cleaning, cooking, tidying up the garden. That could be spent on something more enjoyable. Like what? Hobbies, traveling, socializing with people your own age. Samantha opened the folder and took out some color brochures. Look at the wonderful facilities. This complex right here is only a half-hour drive from here. It has a library, fitness center, pool, organized recreation. I picked up the brochure and flipped through it. The pictures showed smiling seniors playing cards, swimming in the pool, doing yoga. It all looked very attractive and very artificial. How much does it cost? I asked. Rowan coughed and opened his briefcase. There's detailed pricing information right here. Of course, it's not cheap, but if you sell your house... Oh, here's the thing. You want me to sell the house. Mom, that makes sense, Samantha said with some irritation. Why do you need such a big property if you're going to move anyway? It's better to get good money for the house and spend it on a comfortable old age. And what will be left to my heirs? The question hung in the air. Samantha blushed, and Rowan began to examine the contents of his briefcase. Mom, don't say that, her daughter finally said. That's not what we're thinking about. We care about your well-being, not your inheritance. Then why are you so insistent on telling me to spend all my money on a nursing home? It's not a nursing home, it's a... Call it what you want. It doesn't change the point. Rowan closed his briefcase and looked at me with an expression of patient determination. Jacqueline, we understand that change isn't easy, but sometimes you have to make smart choices, even if they seem difficult. You don't want to be a burden on your daughter, do you? I'm not asking anyone for anything. Not yet. What happens when you start having health problems? Samantha will have to quit her job, come to you every day, deal with your problems. Is that fair to her? His words were calculated to make me feel guilty. A classic manipulation technique is to make a person feel selfish for not wanting to do something that benefits the manipulator. I'm not forcing anyone to court me, I said, but the moral obligation remains, Rowan insisted. Children always feel responsible for their parents, and the more difficult the situation becomes, the more that responsibility presses in. Samantha nodded, supporting her husband. Mom, we don't want to get into trouble between us because of your stubbornness. It's better to make a reasonable decision now, while we can discuss things calmly. There was an implicit threat in her words. If I don't agree willingly, they'll find other ways to coerce me. I got up from my chair and gathered the brochures into a neat stack. Thank you for the information. I'll think about it. You can't think long, Rowan said. Good places in these complexes are taken up quickly. If we apply next week, it could be ready by the end of the month. I said I'd think about it. Samantha and Rowan got up from the couch. There was a sense of frustration in their movements that the conversation had not led to the desired outcome. Mom, said the daughter at the door, we do care about you. And if you can't make the decision for yourself, we may have to make it for you. I woke up the next morning with a heavy foreboding. Samantha's words about how they might have to make the decision for me had been going around in my head all night. I brewed some coffee and sat by the kitchen window, watching the birds in the garden. Usually it calmed me down, but today even the chirping of the sparrows seemed disturbing. At 10:30 in the morning, the doorbell rang again. I looked out the window and saw Samantha's car, but this time there was another car with them, a dark sedan I didn't recognize. Out of it stepped a middle-aged man in a suit with a briefcase in his hands. I took my time opening the door. My heart was beating faster than usual, and I sensed that this visit would be different from all previous ones. The bell rang again, more insistently. "Mom, we know you're home," came my daughter's voice. "Open up, please. It's important." I went to the door and opened it, leaving the security chain. Through the crack, I saw Samantha Rowan and an unfamiliar man. "Who is it?" I asked. "That's Mr. Burton," Samantha said. "He works at the real estate agency. We asked him to come to appraise the house." "Without my permission?" "Mom, it's just a preliminary appraisal, so we know what it's worth so we can plan for your future." I took off the chain and opened the door all the way. Mr. Burton was a man of about 45, with a neat beard and attentive eyes. He held out a business card to me. "Mrs. Zapari, I realize my assessment may seem premature, but your daughter thinks it's best to prepare ahead of time." "Prepare for what?" "For the sale of the house," Rowan said, entering the hallway uninvited. "We talked about it yesterday. We talked about the nursing home. We weren't talking about selling the house." "Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be," Samantha sighed. "How are you going to pay for a place in the complex if you don't sell this house?" Mr. Burton stood back, clearly feeling uncomfortable. He realized he was caught up in a family squabble, but professional obligations wouldn't let him walk away. "Mrs. Zapari, if you're not ready for an evaluation, I can come back another time," he suggested. "No," Samantha said sharply. "We've all made arrangements already. Mr. Burton came on purpose, and it would be rude to let him go with nothing." "I didn't make any arrangements with anyone," I said firmly. "Mom, you just don't understand the gravity of the situation," Rowan interjected. "We can't wait until you're ready to make a decision. You have memory problems. You're becoming forgetful and inadequate." His words hit me like a slap in the face. Memory problems, forgetfulness, inadequate. It was an outright lie, and they all knew it. "I don't have any memory problems." "Of course you do," Samantha said with a patronizing smile. "People with such problems rarely realize they have them. That's why loved ones have to take responsibility." Mr. Burton shifted from foot to foot, increasingly aware that he was witnessing an unpleasant family scene. "Perhaps I really should come back later," he repeated. "No," Rowan said firmly. "We've already wasted too much time on persuasion. Appraise the house. But Mrs. Zapari hasn't consented." "I'm Mrs. Zapari's daughter," Samantha interrupted him. "And I have the right to act in my mother's best interests when she can't make reasonable decisions for herself." That wasn't true. Neither Samantha nor anyone else had the right to dispose of my property without my consent. But Mr. Burton was not a lawyer and could take their word for it. "I forbid the appraisal of my house," I said loud and clear, "and I demand that you leave my property immediately." "Mom, don't be silly," Samantha laughed, but the laughter sounded strained. "You realize we're doing this for your own good." "I realize you're doing this for your own good." Rowan took a step toward me, and there was something menacing in his gaze. "Jacqueline, you're acting like a capricious child. We're trying to solve your problems, and you're throwing tantrums." "What are my problems? Name one." "Your age, your health, your lack of judgment." "My health is perfectly fine." "It's fine now," Samantha agreed. "But what happens tomorrow? What happens in a month?" "We can't wait for an accident to happen." She turned to the realtor. Mr. Burton, start the appraisal. It's a routine procedure before putting a property on the market. I'm not going to sell the house, I said. Mom, you can't live here forever. Samantha's patience was clearly wearing thin. Sooner or later, this house is going to be sold anyway. It's better to do it now, while you can get a good price and ensure a decent old age. And if I don't agree, then we'll have to go to the lawyers, Rowan said. There are procedures for declaring incapacity for people who can't make intelligent decisions. The threat was spoken calmly, but that didn't make it any less frightening. A declaration of incapacity would mean the removal of all rights, including the right to dispose of one's own property. You have no grounds for such a declaration. Mom, Samantha sighed, you do realize that we will find doctors to confirm our fears, right? It will be enough to show how stubbornly you cling to a house that you clearly can't afford. Mr. Burton looked increasingly uncomfortable. He clearly hadn't expected to witness a family blackmail. Mrs. Zipari, he said cautiously, if you are adamantly opposed to the appraisal, I can't do it without your written consent. Then that consent will be obtained, Rowan said, one way or the other. He grabbed my arm above the elbow, squeezing my fingers so hard it hurt. Jacqueline, stop playing games. Sign the consent form for the evaluation. Let me go. When you sign the papers. Samantha came from the other side and took my hand, too. Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. We'll still get what we want, but we can do it the easy way or the hard way. They held me tightly, and I realized I couldn't physically resist them. Rowan was much stronger than me, and Samantha, despite her short stature, was also younger and stronger. Get lost, Samantha shouted, losing the last vestiges of self-control. We need this house more. Her scream sounded so loud and angry that Mr. Burton recoiled. Samantha realized she had given herself away and tried to remedy the situation. I mean, what I meant to say was, you should move out, for your own good. But it was too late. The mask of the caring daughter had finally fallen, and everyone could see her true colors. Mrs. Zipari, Mr. Burton said firmly, I will not participate in coercion. Call me when you are ready to discuss the sale voluntarily. He headed for the exit, but Rowan blocked his way. Wait, we've already wasted time getting you here. Do your job. My job is to appraise properties at the owner's request, not under duress. Then get the hell out of here, Rowan shouted. We'll find another realtor. Mr. Burton walked quickly past him and out of the house. A minute later, we heard the sound of a car driving away. Samantha was still holding my hand, but her grip had loosened. Rowan looked out the window, watching the realtor drive away. Now we'll have to find a more cooperative appraiser, he said. Or more drastic methods, Samantha added. I realized I couldn't stay in this house any longer. Not today. Not while they were here. I needed time to think and decide what to do next. I'll leave, I said. Where to? Samantha wondered. It's none of your business. Mom, you can't just. I can, and I'm leaving. I went up to the bedroom, packed a few things into a small bag, and went back downstairs. Samantha and Rowan were standing in the living room, talking quietly. Where are the keys to the house? Rowan asked when he saw me with the bag. With me? Leave them here. This is my house, and the keys stay with me. Mom, Samantha tried to revert to her caring daughter role. Where are you going to go? You don't have any other relatives. I'll find a place. But that's stupid. Why spend money on a hotel when you can do it right now? I headed for the door, but Rowan was blocking the way again. Jacqueline, you're not going anywhere until we get this house settled. Move out of the way. When you leave your keys. I looked into his eyes and saw cold determination. He really was ready to hold me by force, but I wasn't going to give in. For the last time, step back. And what will you do if I don't? Instead of answering, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the emergency number. Hello, police? I said loudly. I'm being held in my own home against my will. Rowan jumped away from the door like a stung man. Hang up the phone, he hissed. You do realize the consequences, don't you? I do. You'll be arrested for abuse of authority and unlawful coercion. Samantha snatched the phone from me and disconnected the call. Mom, you're crazy. Why would you call the police? To protect my rights. What rights? You said you were leaving, but I didn't say I was giving you the house. I took my phone and headed for the exit. Rowan didn't stop me this time. At the door, I turned around and looked at my daughter and son-in-law. You shouldn't be here when I get back. When you get back? Samantha asked. You'll see. I walked out of the house, got in my car, and drove away without looking back. I stopped at the first hotel I could find, a modest two-story building on the edge of Baldwin Park called the Pine Grove Inn. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a tired face, didn't even look up from her magazine when I approached the front desk. Apparently, lonely older women carrying small bags were a common sight at this establishment. How many nights? She asked, handing me a form. One. One night for now. $75 a night, payable in advance. I paid cash and got the key to room 207 on the second floor. There was no elevator, so I had to climb a narrow staircase with worn carpeting. The corridor smelled of old tobacco smoke and cheap air freshener. The room was small but clean. One bed, a desk by the window, a chair that had seen its best days about 20 years ago, and a tiny bathroom. The window overlooked the parking lot and the road where trucks drove noisily by. I set my bag on the table and sat on the bed. Only now, in the silence of the room, did I truly realize what had happened that morning. My own daughter and her husband had tried to force me to sell the house. They were willing to hold me down, threaten to declare me incapacitated, bring in realtors without my consent. The most painful was Samantha's scream, "Get lost! We need this house more!" There was not a drop of love in those words, not a hint of concern for her mother, only greed and anger at my defiance of their plans. I tried to remember when exactly this attitude had started. Samantha had always been calculating, but before she'd at least pretended to consider my opinion. Apparently, at some point, she'd decided there was no point in pretending anymore. The clock read 2:30 in the afternoon. I hadn't eaten breakfast, and now I felt hungry, but the thought of food didn't seem important. It was more important to figure out what to do next. Could I just go home and kick the intruders out? Or would they already change the locks and claim they were acting in my best interest? I pulled out my phone and just held it in my hands for a while, pondering. I needed help, but who could I turn to? I didn't have any close friends. I had gotten used to keeping my personal life separate from my professional life during my years as a secretary at a law firm. My neighbors were nice people, but not close enough to interfere in family conflicts. And then I thought of Harrison Black. Harrison worked as an attorney at the same firm where I was a secretary. This was 15 years ago, when he was just starting out. I helped him with the paperwork, gave him tips on how to better organize his work with clients, sometimes even edited his letters to remove overly complicated legal terms. Harrison was one of the few young lawyers who treated secretaries with respect. He never raised his voice, always said, "Thank you for work done," and remembered staff members' birthdays. When I retired, he gave me a beautiful indoor flower and told me he would miss our partnership. After I retired, we kept in touch for several years. Harrison sometimes called to congratulate me on holidays, told me about his successes in his career. Then communication faded, as is often the case with working acquaintances. But I remembered that he had opened his own practice and specialized in family law. I found his number in the phone book. The firm was called Black and Associates, and the address was downtown. It was possible that Harrison had become a successful lawyer in 15 years and had forgotten about his former secretary. But I had no other choice. I dialed the number. A woman with a professionally polite voice answered the phone. Harrison Black's office. Good afternoon. Hello. My name is Jacqueline Zapari. I'd like to speak with Mr. Black. Do you have an appointment? No, but we know each other. I worked with him at Morrison and Sons. One moment, please. The tune of waiting seemed endless. I was about to hang up when I heard a familiar voice. Jacqueline, what a nice surprise. How are you? Harrison sounded genuinely pleased, and I was relieved. Harrison, hello. I'm sorry to bother you during business hours, but I have a situation and I need legal advice. Sure. What is it? It involves my daughter and my house. I'm afraid it's difficult to explain over the phone. Oh, I see. Can you meet me? I just got off this afternoon. Yeah, I can come over right now. That's great. Is the address the same as the address in the book? 253 Elm Street? That's right. I'll be there in half an hour. I'll be there. And Jacqueline. Don't worry too much. Whatever the situation, there's always a solution. His words had a calming effect. I packed my bags, left my key at the front desk, and drove downtown. Harrison's office was in a small but solid red brick building. There was a coffee shop on the first floor and several law offices on the second floor. Harrison's secretary, a woman in her 30s with a short haircut and intelligent eyes, greeted me friendly. Mrs. Zapari, Mr. Black is waiting for you in his office. Harrison hadn't changed much in 15 years, except for the gray in his hair and the seriousness in his face. He got up from his desk and hugged me like an old friend. Jacqueline, you look beautiful. Sit down and tell me what's bothering you. His office was tastefully decorated dark wooden furniture, bookshelves to the ceiling, a few diplomas on the walls. On the desk was a picture of a woman and two children. A beautiful family, I said, nodding at the photo. Thank you. Jennifer and the twins, 10 years old now. But you didn't come here to discuss my family. Tell me what happened. I started at the beginning, with Samantha's increased visits, the talk about the nursing home, yesterday's threats. Harrison listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, jotting down highlights on a notepad. When I got to this morning, to Samantha's screaming and physical coercion, Harrison's face darkened. Did they really hold you by force? Yes. Rowan squeezed my arm so hard it left bruises. Show me. I rolled up my sleeve. I could clearly see the finger marks on my forearm. That's a felony, Harrison said. You could file a police report. But this is my daughter. Kinship doesn't give you the right to use physical force, especially when it comes to forcing her to give up her property. He put down his pen and looked at me carefully. Jacqueline, I have to ask, do you really have no health problems that could affect your capacity? I don't. I have regular checkups, tests. Last time I saw a doctor 2 months ago, everything's normal. And your mental state? I'm fine. Harrison, you can see for yourself that I'm adequately narrating the situation, remembering dates, names, details. I can see that. Then trying to declare you incompetent is doomed to failure. But they can take a long time and cause a lot of trouble. He stood up and walked around the office. Jacqueline, there are several ways to deal with this problem. The first is to go to the police about the coercion. The second is to file a civil suit for interference with the owner's rights. The third, he stopped and looked at me with a slight smile. The third is to show them that you're not a helpless old lady who can be dictated to. What do you mean? What do you think? Harrison returned to his desk and opened the file folder. His movements were confident, professional. Years of practice had taught him to quickly move from personal communication to business discussion. Jacqueline, let's look at your situation from a legal point of view. First of all, are you the sole owner of the house? Yes, I bought it with my own money after my divorce from Samantha's father. All the deeds are in my name. Are there any encumbrances, liens, debts? None. I paid off the mortgage 10 years ago. Harrison wrote this information down and continued his questioning. Was there a will? Yes, 15 years ago. It leaves everything to Samantha. Who drew up the will? A lawyer from the firm where we worked, Mr. Morrison Sr. Mr. Morrison Sr. Did you make any changes to the will after you made it? No. At the time, it seemed logical to leave everything to my daughter. I have no other close relatives. Harrison nodded and put his pen away. Good. Now, the most important thing is that a will is not an unchangeable document. You have every right to change it or revoke it at any time as long as you remain legally capable. I felt something tighten in my chest. The thought of changing my will seemed radical, almost treasonous to my daughter. But Samantha is my only daughter. That doesn't mean she's automatically entitled to an inheritance. An inheritance is your gift, not her right. And if she's trying to obtain that gift through coercion and threats, it's only logical to reconsider. Harrison stood up and walked to the bookcase, where he pulled out a thick folder of documents. Look at it from a practical point of view. What happens if you die tomorrow and the will remains intact? Samantha gets the house. What would she do with it? The question took me by surprise, even though the answer was obvious. Sell it. Sell it immediately. Exactly. She'll use the money for her own needs. The house you love, the house you've lived in for 30 years, will be gone from your family forever. And Samantha won't even be grateful. She thinks she's entitled to the money. His words were cruel, but true. I could really see how Samantha looked at my house, not as a family nest, but as a source of income. What are my options? I asked. Several. 1. You could change the will, leaving Samantha a smaller share or leaving her out altogether. 2. You can sell the house while you're still alive and use the money as you see fit. 3. You can gift or bequeath the house to someone else, a charitable organization, for example, or a distant relative. And if I sell the house where I will live, buy another, smaller and more comfortable, or rent an apartment, or actually move into a senior complex, but of your own volition, not under duress. Harrison returned to the table and began drawing a diagram on a piece of paper. You see, Jacqueline, the main problem is that Samantha sees you as an obstacle to your inheritance. She's waiting for you to die or become incapacitated so she can gain control of your estate. And the longer you live and stay healthy, the more nervous she gets. But I'm her mother. For some people, family ties are less important than material gain. Unfortunately, your daughter seems to be one of those people. He showed me a diagram he'd drawn. It showed a timeline with several decision points. Now you have a unique opportunity. You are healthy, capable, and have every right to dispose of your property. If you wait too long, Samantha can try to get you declared incompetent through the court. It's complicated, but not impossible, especially if she can find a doctor willing to back up her story. Is that possible? Unfortunately, yes. The elder guardianship system sometimes fails. If relatives are persistent and willing to spend money on lawyers and medical examinations, they can get their way even if there is no real basis. I felt a chill in my stomach. So Rowan's threat wasn't just words. Would changing the will help? Absolutely. If you change it now, before anyone questions your capacity, it's almost impossible to undo. Harrison pulled some forms out of a folder and placed them in front of me. There is some standard wording. You can disinherit an heir because of unworthy behavior. You can bequeath the property to other people or organizations, or you can make the bequest conditional. For example, stating that the heir will receive the property only if he fulfills certain requirements. What requirements? Anything reasonable. For example, providing you with decent care for the rest of your life, or not to sell the house for a certain period of time, or use it only as a residence, not as a source of income. I found the idea of a conditional will interesting. It would be a way to protect my interests without permanently severing my relationship with my daughter. Is it possible to make a will so that the house can't be sold? You can put restrictions on the sale, but there is a nuance. If the heir finds himself in a difficult financial situation, the court may authorize the sale contrary to the terms of the will. Then it's not a very strong defense. It's not. A more reliable way is to sell the house now and bequeath the money with conditions on its use, or spend the money on yourself in general. Travel, hobbies, charity. Harrison was silent, giving me time to consider the information. I looked at the documents and tried to imagine how I would feel signing the papers that would disinherit Samantha. Was there any way to, give her one last chance? I asked. Maybe if she realized she might lose her inheritance, she would change her behavior. We could try, but it's risky. If you show her the new will as a threat, she may accelerate her actions. She may try to get you declared incapacitated before the changes take effect. What if you don't show her, but just change your behavior? Become more independent. Show that you have no intention of submitting to her plans? That's a safer approach. But remember, people who are willing to use physical coercion rarely stop before other extreme measures. Harrison looked at his watch. Jacqueline, you don't have to make a decision right now, but I recommend at least making a new will as a protective measure. It can be changed later if the situation improves. How long will it take? If you decide today, I can have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. The will is effective immediately upon signing and notarization. I picked up one of the forms and read the standardized text. The legal language was dry and formal, but behind the words was an opportunity to protect myself from further attempts at coercion. If I change my will Samantha know about it? Only after you die, when the will is made public. Until then, it's privileged information. Couldn't we make her find out sooner, at a certain point? Harrison raised his eyebrows. You could, for example, if you decide to tell her, or if you need to use the fact that the will has been changed as an argument in a dispute. You mean as a bargaining chip? Exactly. Sometimes knowing your opponent has serious legal options cools them down better than direct threats. I put the form aside and looked out the window. People were going about their business, unaware that in the lawyer's office, a woman was making a decision that would change her entire family situation. Harrison, what will happen to the house if I sell it now? Would I be able to live somewhere else as comfortably? Sure. You could buy an apartment or a small house with the proceeds and still have a decent amount of money left over to live on. The main advantage is that you'll choose where and how you want to live instead of being dependent on your daughter's plans. What if she tries to contest the sale? On what grounds? You're competent, you own the house, you have no obligations to her. The only thing she can do is to try to prove that you were forced to sell or were in an inadequate state. But with witnesses and medical evidence, that's almost unrealistic. Harrison gathered the documents into a neat stack. Think about my suggestions. In the meantime, I suggest you don't go home alone. If Samantha and her husband are still there, you'd better bring witnesses or call the police for an escort. Do they have a right to be in my house? Only if you gave them permission. And since you asked them to leave, their presence there is a trespassing offense. He handed me his card. Call me anytime. And remember, you don't have to put up with mistreatment just because it's your family. The next day at 11:30 in the morning, I sat in the notary's office, signing the documents that would change my life once and for all. Harrison had kept his word. The new will was ready by morning. I thought long and hard all night in my hotel room, weighing the pros and cons, and by dawn I had made my decision. The notary, an elderly man with a neat gray beard, scrutinized the document before stamping it. Mrs. Zapari, do you fully understand the contents of this will? Yes, I do. And you're making this decision voluntarily, without coercion from any third party? Absolutely voluntarily. He nodded and sealed the document with the official seal. Now all my assets, including the house, would pass upon my death to a local charity for the elderly. Samantha was no longer my heir. The document is effective immediately, the notary said as he handed me a copy of the will. I recommend that you keep the original in the safe or give it to your lawyer for safekeeping. I put the papers in my purse next to another document, the power of attorney for all my affairs, which I'd made out in Harrison's name. Now, even if Samantha tried to have me declared incompetent, I would have the protection of an experienced lawyer. As I left the notary's office, I felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. On the one hand, I had secured myself from further attempts at coercion. On the other hand, I had to go home and face Samantha and Rowan. The drive to Baldwin Park took 20 minutes. I purposely drove slowly, preparing myself for the upcoming conversation. Harrison had advised me to be firm, but not aggressive, to make it clear that I was in control of the situation, but not to reveal all my cards at once. As I pulled up to the house, I saw that both of Samantha's cars and the unfamiliar sedan were still parked in the driveway. So they weren't going to leave. What's more, someone else had joined them. I parked at the curb and sat in the car for a few minutes, watching the house. There were lights burning in the windows, even though it was a sunny day. Apparently, they felt like complete masters. That thought made me more angry than yesterday's threats. I got out of the car, pulled a small suitcase of belongings from the trunk, and headed for the entrance. The key turned easily, which meant they hadn't changed the locks. At least not yet. The sounds of voices came from the living room. Samantha was talking animatedly with a man I didn't recognize. Rowan was sitting in my favorite chair, studying some papers. "Mom!" Samantha exclaimed when she saw me at the door. "You're finally back. We were so worried." The lie was so obvious that I didn't even bother to respond. Instead, I looked at the stranger. "Who is this?" "Allow me to introduce myself," the man said, rising from the couch. "David Crowley, Realtor. I'm here at your daughter's request for a real estate appraisal." "I didn't authorize the appraisal." "Mom, don't start that again," Samantha said tiredly. "We already talked about this yesterday. Yesterday, you forcefully pushed me out of my own home." Mr. Crowley looked back at Samantha. Apparently, he had not been told all the details of yesterday's incident. "Mrs. Zapari," he said cautiously, "if you don't mind an evaluation, I can come back another time." "You can leave right now," I replied. "I won't need an evaluation." "You won't?" Rowan looked up from his papers. "Jacqueline, you realize you're going to have to sell the house sooner or later." "To who?" "Who? To people who really need it. A young family with children, for example." He sounded noble, but I knew he wasn't interested in the needs of young families. He was interested in the money from the sale. "Rowan, this is my house, and I decide what to do with it." "Mom," Samantha interjected, "you can't live here forever. Be realistic. And you be honest. Say outright that you want the money from the sale." Samantha blushed, but quickly pulled herself together. "I want you to have a comfortable old age. If that requires selling the house, then yes, I'm in favor of selling. But my opinion doesn't interest you?" "Your opinion is based on emotion, not common sense." Mr. Crowley clearly felt uncomfortable witnessing a family quarrel. "Maybe I really should leave," he suggested. "No," Rowan said firmly. "Appraise the house. We have a power of attorney from Jacqueline." "You have what?" I asked. Rowan handed me the paper. I read it and couldn't believe my eyes. It was a power of attorney in my name, authorizing Samantha to handle my estate. The signature was crudely forged. Where did you get this? You gave us that power of attorney 6 months ago, Samantha lied. Remember when you were having trouble with the paperwork at the bank? I never gave you any power of attorney. Mom, you forgot. This is further evidence that your memory is deteriorating. I looked at Mr. Crowley, who was scrutinizing the forged document. Mr. Crowley, it's a forgery. I never signed such a paper. Mrs. Zapari, he said uncertainly, I'm not a handwriting expert. If there's any doubt about the authenticity of a document, it's best to consult a lawyer. That's a good idea, I said, pulling out my cell phone. I'll call my lawyer. What lawyer? Samantha was worried. Harrison Black of Black and Associates. Her daughter's reaction was immediate. She turned pale and exchanged a worried look with Rowan. Mom, why do you need a lawyer? We're a family. We can sort this out ourselves. Apparently we can't. Yesterday you were physically abusive. Today you're forging documents. We didn't forge any documents. Rowan was outraged. This power of attorney is perfectly legal. Then you won't mind checking it. I started to dial Harrison's number, but Rowan snatched the phone away from me. Stop making a circus out of this, he shouted. Mr. Crowley, start the appraisal. Here's the power of attorney. Here's the deed to the house. Give me my phone back, I said calmly. When you stop stopping us from helping you. Rowan, I said in the same calm tone of voice, if you don't give me my phone back right now, I'm going to scream so loud the whole neighborhood will come running. Just try it. I took in a full chest of air and shouted, Help! I'm being robbed! Call the police! My scream was so loud and piercing that all three of them recoiled. Rowan held out his phone to me in confusion. You've lost your mind. Maybe I have. And you've committed theft of property. That's a felony. Voices were heard outside the window. The neighbors had indeed responded to the screams. Mr. Crowley hastily gathered his papers. I'm leaving. Take care of all the legal matters first. Mr. Crowley, wait, Samantha shouted, but he was on his way out. I'm sorry, but I don't work in litigation. Contact me when you have all the necessary documents. The door slammed, and it was just the three of us. Rowan glared at me angrily. Samantha nervously fiddled with the fake power of attorney. Mom, she finally said, do you realize what you're doing? We're trying to help you, and you're acting like a homeowner defending his rights. That's exactly how I'm supposed to act. Your rights? Rowan laughed. What rights do you have? You're an old, sick woman who can't make sensible decisions. I'm not sick and I make decisions just fine. You, on the other hand, are criminals. Forgery and theft are serious offenses. Samantha came closer to me. Mom, let's talk calmly. No yelling or threats. Okay, talk. We really care about you. And if our methods seem too harsh to you, we can talk about it another way. How? Move into a nursing home voluntarily. Sell the house and live off the proceeds. Don't force anyone. Don't fake anything. And what do you get? Us? Samantha acted surprised. We get peace of mind about your fate. And an inheritance. Don't forget the inheritance. Mom, we don't know how long you're going to live. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20. It's not about the inheritance. It's about your comfort. She was lying, and we all knew it. But now I knew I had a trump card they didn't realize they had. Samantha, I said, what if there is no inheritance at all? What do you mean? What if I bequeath the house to someone else, or sell it and spend the money on myself? The daughter froze, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You can't do that. Why not? Because I'm your daughter. I'm the only heir. An inheritance is a gift, not an obligation, and I have the right to choose who I give it to. Rowan took a step forward. the same expression in his eyes as yesterday. Jacqueline, don't be silly. You wouldn't disinherit your daughter over a petty disagreement. Petty? I questioned you. You call threats, coercion, and forging documents petty disagreements? We're fighting for your well-being. You're fighting for my money. And I'm beginning to realize that I don't want that money to go to people who would do anything for it. Samantha suddenly sank to the couch and cried. But even in her tears, I could see the calculation. She was hoping to make me feel sorry for what she'd said. Mother, she sobbed, how can you say that? I am your only daughter, your blood. Are strangers more important to you than me? Strangers don't try to force me out of my own home. We didn't. We offered better terms. By yelling, get lost. You were offering me better terms? Samantha wiped her eyes and looked at me with an expression I remembered from her childhood, the way she looked when she wanted something that was very important to her. It was both guilty and pleading, a look designed to melt a mother's heart. Mom, she said quietly, remember when you and I used to bake cookies for Christmas? You always let me lick the dough off the spoon. I remembered. Samantha was about 7 years old then, and she was standing on the chair next to me, carefully rolling out the dough. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, and the radio was playing Christmas carols. I remember, I said. Do you remember our trips to the park? You used to push the swing so high that I was afraid I'd fall, but you kept asking for more. I remember that too. Samantha got up from the couch and walked over to me. Her face was softer, her voice sounding almost childlike. Mommy, we were happy then, weren't we? We were a real family. We were, I agreed, and I remember you used to read me bedtime stories. Sleeping Beauty was my favorite. You read it every night until I memorized it by heart. The memories were indeed warm and dear. Little Samantha seemed such an innocent creature that it was hard to believe she had grown into a woman ready to kick her mother out of the house. What's changed, Mom? Samantha continued. Why don't we trust each other anymore? What has changed is that yesterday you were yelling at me. Get lost, I replied calmly. I didn't mean to. I was upset. I said something stupid. Haven't you ever said something you regretted? I have, but I've never tried to take someone's house by force. Samantha lowered her head. Mom, maybe we really were too pushy, but we're genuinely worried about you. This house is so big, and you're all alone. Samantha, stop saying the same thing. I'm doing a great job with the house. You are now. What about a year from now? 5 years from now? I don't want you to get hurt because of your stubbornness. Rowan, who had been silent until now, couldn't take it anymore. Jacqueline, stop playing the noble old lady, he shouted. You realize that sooner or later you will break down. You can't cheat age. Rowan, Samantha said softly, you don't have to. I do, he interrupted his wife. I'm tired of listening to this sentimental talk. She's using our emotions against us. He came closer and looked at me with ill-concealed anger. You know what I think? You just enjoy having power over us. You like the fact that we depend on your decisions. Rowan, Samantha tried to stop him. Shut up, he snapped at her. Your womb is playing cat and mouse with us. The last words were spoken with such hatred that Samantha flinched. Rowan was usually in control in my presence, but now the mask was completely off. Rowan, get out of my house, I said quietly. I won't. This is going to be our house, and the sooner you accept that, the better for everyone. Ours? I asked again. Of course. Samantha would inherit it, and we'd move out of our damn one-bedroom. Samantha tried to stop her husband with a glare, but he was too agitated to think. Did you think we'd be renting forever? Pay someone else's uncle for the right to live in a cramped apartment? Rowan, shut up! Samantha shouted at him. Why should I shut up? Let him know the truth. We've been married for 5 years, and we're still living like students. And there's a huge house here, and some stubborn old woman won't share it. Share it? I was surprised. It's my house. It's yours for now, but time passes, and we're not getting any younger. We need a place for the children. Do you have kids? Not yet, but we're planning to, and we don't want to raise them in a cramped apartment. I looked at Samantha, who was standing there red with embarrassment. So, you've already planned my life and my death? Mom, we're just thinking about the future, she said. About her future. Have you thought about me? Of course, we're offering you a great place in a nursing home. A nursing home, I repeated, to make room for your future children. Samantha couldn't find anything to say. Rowan was silent too, probably realizing he'd said too much. I walked to the chair and sat down. I needed time to digest what I'd heard. Tell me honestly, I said at last. When exactly did you decide that I should leave my own home? Mom, it's not that you have to. When exactly? I repeated firmly. Samantha looked at Rowan, then lowered her eyes. 6 months ago, we started thinking seriously about having kids, and we realized we needed more space. And you decided it would be easier to kick me out than to rent a bigger house? Not kick you out. We wanted you to move in voluntarily, in a comfortable environment. At my expense. Well, yeah, we don't have that kind of money yet. Rowan couldn't take it anymore. Why should we spend our own money? Samantha's going to inherit this house anyway. So you just want to get your inheritance early? We want a normal life, he exploded. We want to have kids and not be crammed into one room, then get a better job and rent a bigger house. With what money? You know how much the rent is. That's your problem, not mine. Rowan took a threatening step in my direction. Our problems? Who's supposed to look after you when you're finally out of your mind? Rowan, Samantha shouted. Rowan what? Let her know how we really feel about her. He thinks we're going to crawl on our knees in front of her forever. He turned to me with a face contorted with anger. Jacqueline, either you move into a nursing home voluntarily, or we're going to take you to court. And don't think your lawyer's going to help you. We have money for lawyers, too. Where'd you get the money from? I asked. You were just complaining about being poor. We'll find it. We'll borrow it if we have to. Borrow from who? Rowan was silent, realizing he'd said too much again. Samantha was silent too, but I could tell by the look on her face that they had a plan to get the money. You've already arranged a loan against my house, I guessed. No, Samantha said quickly. We have. That's why you're in such a hurry to get the property appraised. Mom, you're getting this all wrong. I'm getting it exactly right. You want to get a loan against a house you don't own so you can use the money to have me declared incompetent. My guess was so accurate they couldn't refute it. And what were you going to do with the debt? I continued. Pay it off after my death by selling the house? Mom, Samantha said quietly, you really have it all wrong. Then get it right. We just want to make sure you're well taken care of, and that takes money. What kind of care? In a nursing home? A good nursing home, with medical care, social programs, with a loan against my house. It's a temporary solution. When you, when we inherit the house, we'll pay it off. I got up from my chair and went to the window. There was ordinary life outside, children playing in the yards, elderly people walking their dogs, young mothers pushing strollers. All of these people were living their lives, unaware of the drama playing out across the street. Samantha, I said without turning around, remember when you were a little girl and you asked me to get a dog? I do. And I explained to you that a dog was a big responsibility, that you had to feed it, walk it, take care of it, even when you didn't want to. And what? You promised you'd be the most responsible dog owner in the world, that you'd love the dog for the rest of your life. Mom, why are you saying that? I turned around and looked her in the eye. The point is that after a month, you lost interest in the dog. And I took over. That was a long time ago. I was a kid. You were a child. And now you're a grown woman who promises to take care of me in my old age. And I realize that those promises are worth exactly as much as your promises about the dog were worth. Samantha turned pale. Mom, this is different. It's exactly the same thing. You want what you want, and you're not going to care about the consequences. Rowan grabbed my shoulder and turned me toward him. Enough. Enough of your moralizing. You think you're a saint? A perfect mother? Let me go. I won't let you go until you hear the truth. You're a bad mother. You selfish, cruel old woman. Rowan, stop, Samantha shouted. I won't stop. Let her know what we think of her. You've never taken any interest in your daughter's happiness, only your own whims. He held me so tightly it hurt, but I didn't scream or pull away. Rowan, I said calmly, if you don't get your hands off me now, I'll call the police. Call them. Let's see who they'll believe, a law-abiding family or a mentally ill old woman. Let her go, Samantha shouted and tugged at her husband's arm. Rowan pushed his wife away and squeezed my shoulder even harder. Jacqueline, for the last time, will you move into a nursing home voluntarily, or will we have to force you? Force me, I answered. Try. Rowan let go of my shoulder and took a step back. His eyes were wide with surprise and confusion. He hadn't expected such a calm answer. Samantha stood between us, looking from her husband to me as if trying to figure out what was going on. Mom, she said uncertainly, what do you mean? Exactly what I said. Force it if you can. I walked over to the couch and sat down with my hands in my lap. Years of working with lawyers had taught me that the best thing to do in a critical situation was to remain calm outwardly, even when my insides were seething with anger. There's just one thing I want to tell you first. What is it? Rowan asked irritably. Yesterday, after you kicked me out of the house, I met with my lawyer, Harrison Black. Samantha became wary. And we discussed my rights as a property owner. Turns out I have some interesting opportunities. What kind of opportunities? Her daughter asked, but she sounded worried. For example, I can sell the house to whoever I want, whenever I want, without anyone's permission or consent. But you wouldn't, Samantha began. I wouldn't? Why not? Do I have any obligation to people who are willing to forcibly remove me from my own home? Rowan snorted. Jacqueline, don't tell tales. You'll never sell this house. You're too attached to it. Perhaps you're right, but there is another possibility. I took the papers I'd gotten from the notary out of my purse and put them on the coffee table. I can change the will. There was silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock and the distant sound of traffic. Samantha stared at the papers as if she couldn't believe her own eyes. What is this? She whispered. A new will, drafted yesterday and probated this morning. Let me see it. Please. Samantha grabbed the documents and began frantically going through them. Rowan peered over her shoulder, trying to make out the legal wording. This is some kind of mistake, the daughter said in a shaky voice. There's no mistake. It's all in accordance with the law. But it says here that the house goes to a charitable foundation. That's exactly what it says. Mom, you can't do this. Yes, I can. I already have. Rowan snatched the deed out of his wife's hands and ran his eyes over it. It's a forgery, he declared. Nobody leaves an inheritance to some homeless person. It's not homeless people. It's a charity for the elderly. It's a respectable organization. Mom, Samantha knelt down next to my chair. You realize this is crazy, right? I'm your daughter, your only daughter. You're my daughter who screamed, "Get lost! We need this house more." I didn't mean to. I was upset. You wanted to. And you said exactly what you thought you said. Samantha grabbed my hands. Mommy, please don't do this. I'll fix myself. I'll change. We're not gonna force you anymore. Samantha, let go of my hands. No, not until you promise to revoke this will. Rowan threw the papers on the floor and paced the room nervously. It's your damn lawyer, he shouted. He's turned you against the family. Harrison just explained my rights to me. He wants to capitalize on family conflict. Lawyers like that destroy families on purpose. Our family wasn't destroyed by lawyers. Who did? Rowan shrieked. Who, if not you and your whims? People who thought they had the right to dispose of other people's property. It's not other people's property, Samantha exploded. This is the family home. This is where I grew up. That's why I've kept this house in perfect condition for 30 years, so you could have good memories of your childhood. And now you want to give it to strangers? I want to give it to people who will be grateful, not to people who think it's their right. Rowan stopped in front of me and clenched his fists. Jacqueline, I'm asking you for the last time. Cancel this stupid will, or we'll take extreme measures. What extreme measures? We'll go to court to declare you incompetent. And don't think it's difficult. It's enough to show that you're disinheriting your only daughter in favor of strangers for any judge to understand that you're not right in the head. Rowan, I said calmly, do you know what a power of attorney is? What power of attorney? It's a power of attorney I made out in the name of my lawyer. It authorizes him to represent me in any legal proceedings. So, so even if you somehow get me declared incompetent, Harrison Black will handle my affairs, a man with 20 years of experience and an impeccable reputation. That's illegal, Rowan screamed. On the contrary, it's perfectly legal. Any capable person has the right to choose his representative in advance in case he loses his capacity. Samantha got up from her knees and went to the window. Her face was dead pale. So you had it all worked out, she said quietly. You planned to disinherit me. I planned to protect myself from coercion. Didn't you care about my interests? Your interests were to kick me out of the house and take possession of it in my lifetime. I'm sorry, but I really don't care about those interests. Mom, do you realize what you're doing? You're destroying our family. The family's already been destroyed. Yesterday, when you yelled at me and demanded that I disappear. Samantha came back from the window and sat down on the couch. Her eyes were full of tears, but I could see they were tears of rage, not grief. So what now? She asked. We're not a family anymore? We're family as long as we act like family, not like predators waiting for a relative to die. We're not waiting for anyone. Rowan was indignant. No? What do? Living in a small apartment and planning children, counting on my house. That's waiting. We're planning for the future. You're planning my death as part of your future. Rowan grabbed his head. You're a sick woman, a mentally ill woman. Maybe I am, but I am a capable sick woman who has the right to dispose of her property. Jacqueline, he said, changing his tone to a threatening one, if you don't revoke the will, we'll make your life unbearable. How? We'll call you every day, come every weekend, bring doctors and social workers. We'll prove to everyone that you're inadequate. Please, it'll be the perfect proof that my decision was the right one. Samantha suddenly jumped up from the couch. Enough, she shouted. Enough of this spectacle. You think you're so smart? You think you outsmarted us? I wasn't outsmarting you. I was just protecting my rights. And our rights? What about my inheritance rights? You don't have inheritance rights. An inheritance is a gift parents give their children for love and respect. Love? Samantha laughed hysterically. Where is your love for me? My love for you doesn't mean I have to let you humiliate yourself. We didn't humiliate you. Rowan called me a fucking mother. You screamed at me to disappear. You used physical force and forged documents. If that's not humiliation, what is? Samantha fell silent, realizing it was pointless to argue. Rowan continued pacing the room, muttering something to himself. Mom, her daughter said finally, give us another chance. What chance? We'll leave now and we won't bother you anymore with talk of moving. You live here as long as you want. And in return, I want my old will back. Samantha, you're missing the point. This isn't about where I'm gonna live. It's about what you'll do for money. We're gonna change. People don't change overnight, especially when it comes to big money. Mom, please. No, Samantha. The decision's been made. Rowan stopped and looked at me closely. Jacqueline, what if we just don't recognize your new will? What do you mean? We challenge it in court. Prove that you weren't in your right mind when you signed it. Try that. Harrison has a videotape of the signing and a doctor's note stating that I'm fully competent. You can fake a videotape. It can be faked, but it's very expensive and very risky. Rowan and Samantha looked at each other. I could see that they were frantically searching for a way out of the situation, but they couldn't find it. You know what? I said, rising from my chair. I'm tired of this conversation. I suggest you pack your things and leave my house. We're not going anywhere, Rowan said. Then I'll call the police. Call the police. We'll say we're here to see a sick relative and we refuse to leave her unattended. And I'll say you're breaking into my house without permission and threatening me. Who will they believe? We'll see. I pulled out my cell phone and started dialing the emergency number. Samantha rushed over to me and tried to grab the phone, but I stepped aside. Hello, police? There are people in my house threatening me and refusing to leave. Samantha snatched the phone from me and pressed disconnect before I could give her the address. Mom, don't, she exclaimed. We're leaving. We're leaving. Rowan stood beside me, breathing hard with anger, but realizing that the police would only make their situation worse. He made a sign to his wife, and they began to gather their things: the briefcase, Samantha's purse, the forged power of attorney, which Rowan crumpled and stuffed into his pocket. This isn't over, he muttered, buttoning the briefcase. It is for me, I replied calmly. They headed for the exit, but Samantha stopped at the door and turned around. She had an expression on her face that I hadn't seen since she was 16 and trying to get permission to have a sleepover at a friend's house. Mom, she said softly, I understand that we behaved wrongly, but you can't punish me for the rest of my life, can you? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just protecting myself. From what? From your own daughter? From people who think they have the right to force me to do something I don't want to do. Samantha moved closer, tears welling up in her eyes. Mommy, please, let's just forget this whole thing. Let's start over. I promise I'll never bring up the subject of moving again. Samantha, it's not just about moving. What else is it about? It's the way you look at me, like I'm an obstacle to your money. That's not true. I love you. And maybe I do. But you love my house more than you love me. No, my daughter sobbed. A house is just a house. You are more important to me. Then why were you ready to force me out of this house? I was thinking of your good. I was honestly thinking. Rowan, who was still standing silently at the door, couldn't take it anymore. Samantha, stop groveling, he shouted. She had already made up her mind. You see, it's useless. Rowan, shut up, his wife snapped at him. It's my mother. Your mother who disinherited you, who chose some bums over you. It's not homeless people, it's a charitable foundation, I corrected. I don't care, Rowan exploded. You've robbed my wife of what is rightfully hers. What right? Birthright. Children inherit from their parents. It's a law of nature. It's a tradition, not a law of nature. And tradition is honored when children respect their parents. We respect you. You call threats and physical coercion respect? Rowan clenched his fists, and I could see that he was barely restraining himself from lashing out at me. Jacqueline, he said in a low voice, you're making a big mistake. What is it? You think you can live without us, but you are an old woman, and sooner or later you will need help. If I do, I'll hire a nurse. With what money? You're going to spend it on your whims. For my needs, not my whims. And yes, I'm going to spend my money on me. Samantha wiped her eyes and tried to pull herself together. Mom, she said in a shaky voice, what if something happens to you? Who will take care of you? People I'll pay to take care of you. And what if I don't have enough money? Then I'll sell the house and move to a more modest place. And you still won't leave me anything? Samantha, you have to understand, I don't have to leave you anything. An inheritance is a gift, not a debt. But I'm your daughter. You're my daughter who was willing to kick me out of the house. That changes things. Rowan grabbed his wife's hand. Samantha, let's get out of here. You don't want to crawl on your knees in front of her. What else can I do? Sobbed her daughter. You have to live your life, I answered for Rowan. Work, save money, buy your own place. It's impossible on our wages. Then get a better job. Or give up your plans to have children until you've solved the housing problem. Mom, you can't be serious. Why can't I? Millions of people live like this, first to support themselves financially, then to start a family. And I'm already 38. How long do I have to wait? As long as it takes. It's your choice, not mine. Samantha lowered her head and was silent for a few minutes. Then she looked up and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost hostile. Okay, Mom, she said quietly. If that's what you decide, so be it. But remember, you chose to be alone. What do you mean? What I mean. If you don't want to be a part of our family, then we won't be a part of your life. Samantha, don't be silly. It's not nonsense. You disinherited me, so you don't consider me your daughter. And if that's the case, why should I play the role of the caring child? There was a note in her voice that made me wary. It wasn't an emotional outburst, but a deliberate statement. What exactly are you saying? That I won't call you anymore, won't come to visit you, won't inquire about your affairs. You wanted your independence? Get it in full. Rowan nodded, supporting his wife. You're right, Samantha. Let her live on her own, if she's so smart. Mom, the daughter continued, when you get sick, don't call us. When you need help, go to your precious foundation. And when you start to die, die alone. Her words were calculated to scare me, to make me change my mind. It was classic emotional blackmail, the threat of a complete breakup. Samantha, I said calmly, are you trying to blackmail me? I'm trying to explain to you the consequences of your decision. The consequences are clear. You will no longer pretend to be a loving daughter. I wasn't pretending. I was, all these months, smiling, caring, concerned about my health, all for the house. That's not true. Then prove it. Accept my decision and continue to talk to me the way you used to. Samantha was silent. She realized that she was trapped by her own words. I can't, she said at last. Why not? Because you betrayed me. You robbed me of everything I had hoped for. You were counting on my death and my inheritance, and I chose to stay alive and get my inheritance my own way. Mom, you know what you're doing, don't you? You're destroying the last bond between us. I'm not destroying ties. I'm just showing them for what they really were. Rowan pulled his wife towards the exit. Samantha, stop it! Don't humiliate yourself in front of her. She made her choice. Now let her live with the consequences. Wait, I said. I want to clarify something. They stopped in the doorway. Samantha, do you seriously think that threatening to cut off communication will make me change my will? Not a threat, a fact. If you don't think I'm worthy of an inheritance, then I don't think you're worthy of my care. I see. And if I left you an inheritance, would you still take care of me? Of course I would. So your love for me depends on the size of the inheritance? Samantha realized she'd said the wrong thing again, but it was too late to back down. It depends on how much you respect me. Is respect measured in money? It's measured in deeds, and what you did showed me that you don't respect me. My actions showed that I will not let anyone force me. And our act will show that we can draw conclusions from your behavior. She turned and walked out of the house. Rowan lingered on the threshold and looked at me with ill-concealed anger. Jacqueline, he said, you will regret this decision. Maybe. Or maybe you will. We? Why should we? Because you've lost someone who could have helped you in your time of need. We don't need your help. We can handle it. Handle it. Good luck to you. Rowan wanted to add something else, but changed his mind and walked out, slamming the door loudly. I was alone in the living room, where only a few minutes ago the passion had been raging. Now it was quiet and peaceful. The sun was peeping through the windows. The birds were singing in the garden. The clock was counting down the hours. Normal life went on, despite the family drama. I went to the window and saw Samantha and Rowan getting into the car. Samantha was saying something to her husband, waving her arms. Rowan answered her angrily. Then they drove away, and the street was empty again. For the first time in months, the house was truly silent. No one paced the rooms, assessing the surroundings. No one was asking persistent questions about my health and plans. No one tried to convince me that black was white. I sat down in my favorite chair and closed my eyes. Was it scary? Yes, a little. Did I regret the decision I had made? Not yet. Samantha had threatened me with loneliness, but hadn't I been lonely all those months when the only thing she cared about was trying to kick me out of the house? Real loneliness is being surrounded by people who pretend to love you, but are really waiting for you to die. And what I have now is just peace. 3 weeks later, I stood on the porch of my house and watched a young family exploring the garden. A married couple in their 30s with a young daughter were enthusiastically discussing landscaping possibilities, and the little girl was chasing butterflies between the flower beds I had spent 30 years meticulously tending. The decision to sell the house came to me a week after Samantha and Rowan left. I realized I could no longer live peacefully in a place that had become a symbol of family conflict. Every room reminded me of unpleasant scenes. Every piece of furniture witnessed humiliating conversations about my old age and infirmity. Harrison helped me find buyers, the Miller family, who were looking for a home to live in permanently, not for resale. James Miller worked as an engineer. His wife Caroline was a school teacher, and their daughter Emily was 6 years old. They fell in love with the house at first sight and were willing to pay the asking price without bidding. Mrs. Zapari, Mr. Miller said as he approached me, we are so grateful for the opportunity to buy such a wonderful home. We promise to keep it in perfect condition. I don't doubt that, I replied. You seem like a man who appreciates what he has. And you won't regret selling it? Mrs. Miller asked. There are so many memories here. The memories will stay with me, and the house will have a new life with a new family. Little Emily ran up to us with a bunch of wildflowers. Mommy, look how pretty these flowers are. Can I plant them in the new house? Of course, dear, Caroline laughed. We'll have our own garden. I looked at the happy family and realized I was making the right decision. This house was made for people who would enjoy living in it, not for those who saw it as a source of income. The paperwork procedure took 2 hours. We sat in the notary's office, signed the papers, handed over the keys. Harrison checked every clause of the contract, making sure my interests were properly protected. Mrs. Zapari, the notary said as he put the final seal on the deed. Congratulations on a successful transaction. The house is now officially owned by the Miller family. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Relieved because no one else could use the house as an argument for coercion. Sad because a whole era of my life was ending. The Miller family left to inspect their new acquisition, and Harrison and I went to the bank to make a deposit. The sum from the sale of the house was large enough to ensure that I would live comfortably into my old age. Jacqueline, Harrison said on the way to the bank, are you sure about the apartment? The day before, I had signed a lease on a small but cozy apartment in the city center. 2 rooms, a modern kitchen, proximity to shopping and medical facilities, everything you need for a comfortable life for an elderly person. Absolutely sure. I don't need a lot of space and it will be a lot less hassle. What if Samantha does try to make things work? Then we'll see. But so far, she's showing no signs of remorse. And it was true. In the 3 weeks since our last fight, my daughter hadn't called once. She hadn't asked about my health or tried to apologize for her behavior. Apparently, she really thought the threat of cutting off communication would make me change my mind. When I returned home after the bank, I found a familiar car at the gate. Samantha was standing on the porch trying to open the door with her old keys. When she saw me, she ran toward me. Mom, she exclaimed. Finally, I've been waiting for half an hour. The keys don't fit. Did you change the locks? I did, I said, getting out of the car. Why? For security reasons. Samantha looked worried and confused. Her usual confidence was gone. Mom, I need to talk to you. It's really important. About what? About the house. The neighbors say you're selling it? Is that true? I already sold it. This morning. The daughter's face turned pale. How, how did you sell it? To who? The Miller family. Very nice people. Mom, you couldn't do that. You couldn't sell the house without my knowledge. Yes, I could, and I did. It was my property. But you knew I was against it. I'm not interested in your opinion anymore, Samantha. 3 weeks ago, you announced the end of our relationship. I was upset. I said stupid things. Maybe, but the decision has been made and it's done. Samantha grabbed my hand. Mom, please tell me this is a hoax. That you didn't sell the house. Let go of my hand. I won't let go, not until you tell me what's going on. What's going on is I'm protecting myself from people who want to take over my life. Rowan got out of Samantha's car. He looked grim and determined. Jacqueline, he said as he approached us, cancel the deal. The deal can't be canceled. It's already registered. Then we'll sue. We'll prove that you were insane at the time of the sale. Try it. I have a videotape of the procedure and medical certificates of full capacity. And we have witnesses to your erratic behavior over the last few months. What kind of witnesses? Neighbors who saw you walking around the garden at night. Your strange conversations with yourself. Forgetfulness. It was an outright lie, but Rowan was apparently prepared to do anything. Rowan, I said calmly, perjury is a criminal offense. Are you willing to risk your freedom? I'd risk anything to get back what was rightfully my wife's. The house didn't belong to your wife. It belonged to me. It did, and now strangers have it. People who paid honest money for it. Samantha let go of my hand and walked back to the car. She was frantically thinking about something. Mom, she finally said. How much did you get for the house? Market value. But how much exactly? That's none of your business. It is, because that money was supposed to be my inheritance. It should have been, but it wasn't. What are you going to do with it? Live on it and spend it all? I'll try. Rowan clenched his fists. Jacqueline, you realize this is despicable, don't you? To disinherit your daughter over a family quarrel? I disinherited my daughter because of coercion and threats. We were trying to help you. You tried to take over my house while I was alive, and now it's been given to complete strangers. Mm, who are treating me with respect, not trying to change my life by force. Samantha came back to us. She had tears in her eyes, but her face was stubbornly determined. Mom, she said, I'm ready to apologize for my behavior. I'm ready to admit that I was wrong. It's too late. Why is it too late? Can't you forgive your own daughter? You can, but you can't undo what you've already done. What actions? Selling the house? Selling the house and changing the will. Mom, I'm sorry. I promise I will never try to force myself on you again. Samantha, you're not apologizing because you know you're wrong. You're apologizing because you lost your inheritance. That's not true. Then answer honestly. If the house still belonged to me, would you come to apologize? The daughter was silent. We all understood the answer to that question. I thought so, I said. Your love and respect depend on the size of your inheritance. Mom, it's natural. Children expect to get something from their parents. They do, but they don't demand it by force, and they don't threaten to break up a relationship if their expectations aren't met. Rowan came closer. Jacqueline, what happens to you when the money runs out? Who's going to take care of you? The people I pay to take care of you, or the employees of the charity that will receive the rest of my estate. And if you get sick, I'll see a doctor. What if you become helpless? I'll hire a caregiver or move into a nursing home by choice. And you don't feel bad that your daughter will be left with nothing? My daughter won't be left with nothing. She has a husband, a job, health, youth. That's enough to build her own life. Without your help? Without my money. And she doesn't need any other help. Samantha suddenly burst into tears. Mommy, she sobbed, don't you love me at all? I do, but love doesn't mean I have to let you humiliate me. I won't do it again, I promise. Samantha, people don't change overnight, especially when it comes to money. But I have changed. I realized I was wrong. You realized you lost. It's not the same. Rowan took his wife's hand. Samantha, stop groveling. You can see she doesn't want to hear anything. I hear it, I said, but I don't believe it. If you were truly remorseful, you would have come 3 weeks ago, right after our fight. Not now that you've heard about the sale of the house. Isn't it better late than never? Samantha asked. In this case, no. Because your repentance is not because you realize you were wrong, but because you want to get back what you lost. They were standing next to their car, frustrated, angry, but still hoping to find a way to turn the situation in their favor. I looked at them and felt strangely calm. For the first time in months, I was completely safe from their attempts at coercion. Jacqueline, Rowan said one last time, are you sure you won't regret your decision? I am. And when you get sick, will you think of your daughter? Maybe I will, but I won't. Why not? Because I know she won't come out of love, but out of guilt, and I don't need help out of pity. Samantha stopped crying and looked at me coldly. Okay, Mom, if that's what you decide, then so be it. But we're not coming back to you. I understand that, and don't expect any help from us in the future. I don't. Then goodbye. Goodbye. They got into the car and drove away. I looked at them and walked into the house I would leave forever tomorrow. but there was no feeling of regret. On the contrary, I felt truly free for the first time in a long time.